Hey guys, just finished up an interview with Tyler Austin. Really, really good dude who's running two different businesses. One is a real estate business out of Northwest Florida. He's in the Destin, Florida area. The other is a software business, REISift. The shirt he sent me right now, this is his company. He's in the same software mastermind as us. Awesome guy. Really is great at breaking down data hygienes, and really all things data and how that plays into the marketing channels that you use to reach out to your prospects. So check out this interview. As I mentioned multiple times on there, we're going to come out with more content that's more concise, A through Z on data. This is just a conversation so that you can get to know Tyler a little bit more and what he has going on across multiple companies. So check it out. Enjoy.
That's
Oh,
better.
is that the office setup behind you? I see a whiteboard or something.
Yeah, so I can spin you around. So it starts from the corner, my room, and then kind of backs around. I got the black board behind me, and then that's a door to my backyard. And then that's like my spare desk for anyone that wants to sit down and work here or whatever in the
Very
team.
cool. Very cool. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you're getting an inside look at someone who I think is a very highly analytical mastermind type guy. Tyler Austin, how's it going, man?
How's it going, man? I appreciate you having me on here. It's
Yeah, dude,
awesome.
I'm glad that we got the audio and video all linked up perfectly so that people can enjoy this interview and conversation as concisely and cleanly as possible.
Yeah, for sure. We got it rocking in, nailed in, dialed in, just how I like it.
Yeah, which is really how you run your businesses as well. A very analytical data guy, very cool background. So I kind of want to hear for the folks that don't know you, what you're up to these days across multiple businesses. I'm sure we'll talk about how we met, and we'll talk about how you got into real estate and all that good stuff. But like, what's on your plate today besides this interview, and what do you have going on across your multiple businesses?
Yeah, so I primarily focus on REISift nowadays. It's kind of like my main thing, networking and focusing on product. But like this morning, right before this, I had my team meeting with my real estate team, and that's my primary one, Florida Cash Real Estate here in Northwest Florida. So I'm in Destin, Florida, and that's like been my big goal is to try and eliminate myself as much as possible from that, which I pretty much have always been. I've always had core team members. So it doesn't take up too much of my time. If I bring on a flip, I like to manage the flips. So that's a time consumer. But, my typical day is wake up and figure out which fires need to be put out first, if there is any, from at my level. And ideally over time, just continue to have other people take out those fires. But for today, it's just, sitting here having a conversation with you. I had a meeting this morning, and after this, I have a meeting with my acquisitions manager, and then I'm pretty much done for the day. So today's a pretty nice day. I try to have a motto or kind of something I live by is like Mondays and Fridays. Like I don't schedule anything business related because I never like to leave a week and I never like to enter a week on doing something I don't want to do. So usually Tuesdays through Thursdays is like actual business stuff. And I try to keep, those Mondays and Fridays pretty open to do things like this or, something else entering in the Monday that I like. So that's kind of what I do.
Love that, man. You mentioned the family. What's your family structure look like? Just to
Yeah.
get
So
to know you a little bit more.
yeah. So I am married. I've been married since I was 18. So I married my wife when I enlisted. I technically it was like one of the paper weddings. I was in training and I ended up getting orders to Alaska. So I was like, well, I don't want to go there and not have her, and I don't want to pay for her to go, so it was like it made sense where we got married, and so that she can get put on my orders. And we've been together like 10 years now. So and then 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago now, while we were stationed in North Dakota, we bring a beautiful little girl into the world called Tessa Ann. And she's just been like, the blessing that just keeps giving kind of scenario. She went in this morning, she took her to my wife's still active duty. She works on base at the clinic, and my daughter had an appointment this morning. And she comes back and she went there for just like a normal little checkup, and turns out she had some shots. So now she has like both of her legs have, shots in them. So, I don't know, as a dad or whatever, whenever you're like, they come back and they got shots, you're like, they said there was just going to be a checkup. They didn't say they're going to be poked, and just kind of, so she's in the living room watching um, Brave, I think is the movie. Yeah, so she's chilling. So it's a little bit of my structure. Most of my family's down in Tampa area. That's where I grew up. Um, and then the other piece of it's up in Pennsylvania. That's where I'm more like my core family's from, so yeah.
All right, cool. So got married at 18, 4.5-year-old daughter, Tessa Ann. I've definitely seen her in some lives, super cute. And wife is still active duty, which is interesting.
Yeah. So she's still active duty. She's actually working on commissioning right now. So she tried last year and didn't get picked up. It's a medical program. So it's like the traditional kind of thing. So she's going to try again this year. So we might end up in Utah. So I might end up being that much more, remote from my business, but we'll probably pick up in Utah then, because I really enjoy that market. So we'll see. But yeah.
Awesome, man. So we got the real estate side, the family, good background on you. How about the REISift side? I love the shirt. Tyler was nice enough to send me some REISift gear. I guess there was like a 50% chance we were both wearing the same one, since you sent me a white and a gray guy.
Yeah, it was a 50% chance. Yeah, so REISift is it's a real estate it's a real estate platform, investors and agents. We actually have some brokerages that use it as well. And essentially, we help real estate, professionals streamline their marketing and sales. So, it's all about marketing smarter, not harder, streamlining it, spending less money on marketing for a higher result. I'm all about high ROI as much as possible. I'm not one of those types of investors that wants to close, 500 deals a year. I'm one of those ones that want to close like 15, but have really good spreads and have freedom. Still, aim to, hit the 7-figure mark every year, but at the same time, I want to do it with the least amount of effort and the smallest team possible. That's just kind of how we rock.
Yeah, that has 80-20 principle written all over it in multiple facets. So love and appreciate that, man. And as I'm sure I'll open it up to you, but I love businesses that kind of organically start out of someone or the founders or the market's own genuine needs, which is definitely the case with REISift. And I've heard great feedback from users. And obviously, you're awesome, dude, always helping people out. I feel like every day, like on Facebook, you're just doing, taking your most valuable asset when you do have a 4-year-old daughter and wife that's still active duty working to, help people out without, unconditionally without asking. So that's just awesome to see that you're this figure in the real estate community, which has been cool to see in general, just like being kind of in that space for 4.5 years. You kind of see people in and out and have a lot of relationships with people. And even how social media is these days, which I feel like I've said on the last few episodes, but it's just what's on my mind, is you kind of like know people through their posts. Because with your brain that has like infinite memory space, it's like a NASA computer. It's like, even if you don't talk to somebody, you might see that you might recognize or see a post in passing of your mindless scrolling throughout the days for most people. And you kind of pick up on like, what their vibe, what their message is, which is maybe what you had me, because I remember you reached out. You reached out to me originally a while ago, and we were kind of talking through there, and our relationship as far as talking more has gained over time, which is cool.
Yeah, it is interesting how you can, over time see. That's the one thing about, the internet. And I think it's important even for like your business brands is like, over time, you can't go back. Like it's always there, and when I was, I didn't touch too much of what my actual like history is before real estate, but like, I'm in the cybersecurity space. So, I was a cybersecurity engineer, penetration tester, whatever you want to say. And something that we always tell people, and it's another big thing on code practicing, is once something hits the internet, it's there forever. It doesn't matter what you do, it's there and it can be found, generally for most cases. So presenting yourself online and how you interact as a business and how you interact as a person, everything you put on there is something that's going to be out there, and you have to be able to own it, and that's one of our core values at Florida Cash Real Estate is accountability. And, it's so important. So, for me, from the very beginning when I decided, I talk about it in the auto lead gen challenge a little bit. I have this um, this thing here. It's like the very first day I had built this. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pat Flynn. If anybody hasn't, you guys got to check out Pat Flynn. He's a really awesome entrepreneur. He wrote a book, Will It Fly? And it was at a time in my life when I was just leaving the military and I was entering into, being a civilian again. And I planned on just going back to school. At the time, I was going pre-med. So I was in organic chemistry, biology, microbiology, all these different because that's the only course I had left was core science courses. And then we found out we were having a kid. I was like, well, shoot, I just left my only income. I'm going to school full time. There's no way this can happen. So it's that exact situation where all chaos was happening at once. So at the time I was really big into trying to, start business, but I wanted to do real estate, but I was doing bird dogging type stuff for agents. It was the total opposite of what you're even allowed to do. It's not even technically legal, to do what I was doing. And I didn't know that at the time because I was just trying to find duplexes. I was going to every single duplex in my area because I wanted to house hack and trying to buy the house from them. And if they weren't interested, but they wanted to sell, then I would they weren't interested in selling at what I wanted to buy it at. I would send it there. And that's kind of how I started searching for finding out about the whole marketing, the off-market properties. But anyway, that emotions and everything I was going through, I ended up writing this thing right here. It's all going to loop back to what you were saying about the, how presenting yourself online. And one of the things on here, it's basically 4 different grids. One says family, one says success, one says finances, one says develop and design. And inside Will It Fly, there was a section, it says, as far as I made it in the book, by the way, because as soon as this happened, I was like, this is it. I don't need to focus on anything else because too many people read through a whole book or read and just burn through something and they don't even take anything from it. It's really just one thing that you really might be looking for.
Dude, I've noticed that same thing with me. I've noticed the same thing with me the last year. I'll read a book until I get one main thing, or I say the 80-20 of the book and then just start on that. So that's cool.
It's huge, man. I mean, I don't really believe in a whole, read 10 books a week kind of things. Why? You're not even taking in information. Right. But yeah, so it has family, finances, develop, design, and success. And one of the things that's on here is that, let's see, I'm making passive income. I'm just going to read off the list here. I'm making passive income. I am helping others through product or resources. And keep in mind, this was about 6 months before my daughter was born. So the context of this was where I want my family to be based off my experiences 5 years after she's born, right? So we haven't hit this point yet. So I am making passive income. I am helping others through products or resources. I have multiple websites, both e-commerce and informative. I'm able to give others advice to do the same thing. I have created many courses teaching development. At the time, I was talking about product development or coding. I have a flipping house business on the side that kind of flopped around. I ended up doing it full time. I am healthy and so is my family. I am an officer in Air Force Reserves. I ended up just leaving. I was active duty. I switched over to the reserves when I got out. I ended up just leaving entirely. And then I have a popular Twitch gaming channel, which is not the case, sadly. But the one I wanted to reference as far as the other thing is I am able to give others advice to do the same thing. And the key word in there is able. And the reason why I wrote it like this is because back at that time, there was a lot of influencers and everybody coming online that did something once and then made it their profession to teach it. And that was something I strongly didn't believe in. So one of my successes was me to build a successful real estate company, something that I had a story behind it to then be able to teach it. But to do it in a way that I think resonates with a lot of people. So for me, it's more about being super transparent. It's about not being what people want you to be based off of what's going to make you have the biggest following. It's not about, how do I have this image that brings the biggest audience into REISift. It's not about any of that to me. And same thing with my real estate investment company. If we get someone on the phone that's doesn't believe in us and they want to just shop us around and they want to not work with us, then I tell them, listen, I don't think we're a good fit for you guys. It could be a $30,000 deal or $40,000 deal. And for me, if the relationship isn't there, it's not really anything. Because if every single transaction and every single, expression that I have with somebody isn't from start to finish a good experience, to me, it's probably not something that I need in my life. So like, that's just how I present myself online. That's just how we try to, interact in our intercom chat on REISift. Everything is 100% organic. There's absolutely zero like hidden emotions behind it. The emotions that I'm feeling as the frustrations of having, someone enter into the product, for example, and not going through the resources like the onboarding course and everything, and then saying that it doesn't work. That frustration I feel immediately comes through in the intercom chat. And I straight up tell you, you did not put in the effort that you need to put into to have the business success that you want. And I've been pegged a little bit as the guy who is aggressive inside of his support chat and tries to keep his users in the platform. And I 100% own that, because my thing is, you can leave as a user. I can give you an extension on payments. I can extend out our contract on your house. I can do all these things, but let's remove all the BS from it. And let's look at the real thing that's stopping either this transaction, or let's look at the real reason that you're leaving the platform. And all of it generally boils down to like an underlying issue, which is like scarcity or lack of ability to like follow through. And so I just pull that out and I just put it out in the open. And generally what ends up happening is people own up to it, or I own up to it, depending on a scenario. So yeah, that's all to say that as far as being online and putting yourself out there, even as a business, there's a historical archive there. And people can try and dig out and pull that archive out at any moment to hold you accountable for your actions. So make sure everything you do, you're accountable for, and you have a reason behind it. So if you're just always organic as a business and you're always organic as a person, you never got to worry about, having to defend your stance on anything. Just a little, I guess, thing, because I have it come up pretty often. So you'll see me go on like the GZ page or one of these other pages expressing my frustration with, people trying to attack the fact that I am being organic. But I think that's the best way to go about it. And it's how I've built the biggest relationships I have in business. In fact, Jonathan, one of my biggest private money lenders and partners in flips, just messaged me, in like, we're like best friends. It's like he funds money, we make money together. It's totally organic, totally transparent. And I think that's how all business transactions should be. Kind of a rant.
No, beautifully said, man. I'm all about those, because there's a lot of stuff that you can pick out there. And like, if someone's listening to like podcast consumption, it's crazy, the stats. Dan Martell posted that in the last SaaS Academy video on podcasts and like how to optimize those, which I've been taking tips and tricks on, like even getting our audio synced. But a podcast, someone who's trying to learn like real estate investing, I don't think you're going to learn it from this type of podcast. But similarly, as we were talking about a book, someone could probably take 1, 2, 3 nuggets from a particular interview that may not even be strictly mechanisms and operations for a real estate investor, and have success and be able to apply, principles, actions, whatever from that. So what I was taking from that, and I saw you talk about this in your interview with Max, which was probably close to 2 years ago or the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
The foundation, what I was thinking, and then you said it yourself, but the foundation for like some of that scarcity and lack of ability to follow through is really like a guiding principle in life of like taking full responsibility for everything, even to the point where you're overly taking responsibility for everything, even stuff that's like not in your control. I still am like working on that. That's something recent I heard from a podcast of he's like a financial planner type guy, but he said that was his main like guiding principle in life, is like overly taking full responsibility for everything in your life. So that's kind of the foundation that you were talking about. And then I think it kind of loops up to scarcity and lack of ability to follow through. And obviously I'm in the software game as well. And every interaction I have, I try to see kind of like those guiding foundations and principles, where it's not like, oh man, you're pulling the wrong list. It's more so like, man, you have like a little bit of a scarcity mindset and you need to make some mental adjustments there. So I'm 100% on the same page with how you kind of just broke down the reputation or kind of how people may perceive you online from repetitive behavior and actions that you've taken in whether it's Facebook groups or the REISift community, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is like setting the expectation. This can be in whether it's in software or it's just a business thing in general, right? Like setting the expectation. And I'm gonna reference this back to like a wholesaling reputation here in a second, but like if someone lands, let's just say on your landing page, and something I've been thinking about a lot lately is even putting a video like on REISift saying, listen, REISift is the platform to build sales and marketing ninjas with no excuses. Like something specifically stating and setting the expectation that if you enter into this platform, you need to be the individual that's anticipating that you're putting effort in. You're here for a purpose. You're here to close deals. You're here to do like you're here to work. You're not here to come in here and try and find shiny objects. That's not what this is about. If you implement and you do, you succeed. I have testimonials, we have case studies, we have all that stuff to prove that that's accurate, including my own business, right? My whole business was built off of, or REISift was built off of my real estate company. So I say that, and now referencing back to wholesaling in real estate, the way that you put yourself out there as a company, the way you brand yourself, if you brand yourself as I'll buy your house now fast, quick, fast, quick for cash kind of like system, you're going to get the people that only want to do that, right? You're going to be scraping the top off from everybody who just needs to sell their house or wants to sell their house to only those people that want to sell now for cash because they're reading the branding and they're attracting to the branding, right? So as you build your companies, like we're in the middle of a whole redesign, rebranding on our branding because my company name is Florida Cash Real Estate, right? Which isn't necessarily bad, but that cash inside of my name automatically gives a stigma that I'm going to give you a little offer, right, to a seller. So, which I want to keep that because we also have Alabama Cash Real Estate and Georgia Cash Real Estate. So I want to keep that. So instead, how do we combat that from a branding perspective? And that is through like colors and through that's through colors. That's through speaking of my 4-year-old, just open the door. Colors. It's through your mission statements. It's through the things that are going to resonate with the person in order to set the expectation that this business is going to be able to solve my problem because they care about the community. They are Florida Cash Real Estate. They have the state colors inside of their branding. They have educational videos on how to solve foreclosure without even selling my house. They have like all these things that are brand specific against, combating every objection that they could probably give you. If you would get on the phone with them, it's being handled through proper branding. And initially starting off, you don't need to do any of that to like close some deals and get rocking and rolling. But it's like, the question is, are you trying to build, the like slumlordy wholesaling company, or are you trying to build, a business, right? And that's like two big identifiers that I think people need to think about when they're getting into the real estate game and presenting themselves both online, like we're talking about, and then also, as a brand. I think it's really important, personally.
Super, super important and good points going along the same topic of conversation we were chatting about of just how you're perceived, either like your own personal self as a social media or a company. I do want to throw in as well, I told T this before we went live, for those guys, for those of you that want specific tactics and like concise, just direct instructions on everything data, I'm going to get some resources from Tyler to throw into the show notes for you, so you can just watch specifically that. This is more so just conversation and kind of hitting on a bunch of different topics. Again, with the idea that you'll be able to pick out some nuggets instead of just like reading an entire book. Want to be able to provide you both as concisely as possible to be respectful of your time. So I'll make sure I get that from Tyler, and then also we'll do some videos in the future, I'm sure, in the InvestorFuse HQ group or the 80/20 public Facebook group as well for this podcast, so that you guys can get just that. I just want to throw that in there real quick.
Yeah, good stuff.
Cool, man. Well, this is definitely some loose general conversation, but just to put a little bit of a structure to it, man. I know you said you're a former airman in the reserves right now, but I'd love to hear, kind of that your journey on getting into real estate. And I'm genuinely curious, like you're somebody that I look up to as far as like, damn, man, he has his software, his SaaS company, software as a service for those that don't know the acronym. He has his SaaS company and he has his real estate company. that's something personally that I've had obstacles with, as far as like not getting close to really like wanting to restart up a company, because it was Dan's wholesaling company essentially. But for me, it's like, damn, I feel stretched enough already just with doing InvestorFuse stuff. So you're somebody that I definitely look up to, really and genuinely. I'm like, damn, man, he is like crushing the real estate game and also crushing the SaaS game. So if you want to touch on that as you're kind of going through your journey here, starting off with how you got into real estate, that'd be cool for everybody to hear, and
Yeah,
myself
for
included, obviously.
for sure. So I enlisted in 2010, and at that time, growing up, like I always wanted to move to Alaska because I always wanted to buy like a cabin. I'm just setting the image here. So I wanted to be the type of guy that moved, joined the military. At the time, I was going Navy, and I was going to be a Navy diver. I had a contract going Navy diver with a subcontract in avionics, and there ended up being some contract flaws or whatever. Navy seemed like they were trying to F me. So I just said, you know what, I'm switching over. Literally walked across into the next door the same day and said, hey, I'm leaving the Navy. I'm going Air Force. And I wanted to go TAC-P at the time, which is Tactical Air Control Party. So they call in airstrikes. So at that time, they're like, no, you don't do that. You can't go in straight, as TAC-P. You need to have a job first, and they'll do that in basic training. I'm like, all right, whatever. Turns out the Air Force was the one that kind of effed me. The Navy probably would have been fine. Who knows? Went through boot camp, did all that stuff, and never got offered TAC-P. So I had the decision between fuels, which just fuel up aircraft and like clean like fuel tanks all day, or ammo, which at the time, the sell was like you get to slap like this electronic bar, and you get to de-staticize your body and go into these big structures with a bunch of bombs, and you get to build missiles, and it sounds so dope. I was like, all right, cool, I'm doing that. So went in, did that for 4.5 years, 5 years. Worked with a lot of awesome people. I was stationed in Alaska and then North Dakota. I flew on an F-16 as an incentive ride. Did a lot of really cool stuff. Throughout that whole process, though, in the back of my mind, I was still thinking about how when I grew up, I really wanted to have a place in Alaska. Obviously, I did end up in Alaska, but it was in a place I never knew about, like North Pole, Alaska. It was like an hour and a half below the Arctic Circle. It was freezing cold, nothing like I thought it was going to be. I think the coldest it got ambient was like a negative 85 while I was there. So that's setting the tone of like the first, like me in my early adulthood moving into, I guess when things started to change for me. And that was when I was leaving the Air Force. Beforehand, I transferred over to a thing called SEERS, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. And in that, I fractured my back in 2 places. And basically, I ended up having to leave, and I had the decision: do I stay in or do I get out? And that's kind of going back to earlier when I mentioned how I ended up getting out. And then I found out we were pregnant. Through that time and that transition there between SEER and getting out, I was just looking at what I wanted to do. I was looking at how to save money, found out about the house hacking thing. So I was trying to look into that. It just seemed like it wasn't possible. Like it didn't seem like I had the financial ability because I was in debt, at this time, maybe like $70,000 or $80,000 in debt. I was buying new vehicles without being I was just not being financially intelligent, even though I researched and I was trying to learn how to be financially intelligent, all this other stuff. Like it just wasn't me. And I don't know if it's because I didn't have, enough money coming in to get there, or if it was because I was over leveraging myself period for the last 7 years or 6 years. And it kind of just let up and just stacked on top of each other. So, all right. So now we're in North Dakota and I'm out and I was going to school.
Pre-med, as Tessa Ange running in the room.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, dude, you're good. I was just down working whenever I work in North Carolina with my nieces. I take my hat off and tip my hat to John, our CTO, because he works every day with 3 kids. So again, give you credit for that.
She goes back to school here in August, this whole COVID thing. So that's kind of like leading up to that. And at the time, I'm out, I'm going to school. I have like $0. I'm trying to find a place to like, I had just bought a new home, but thankfully when we left North Dakota, we broke even on it. My wife ended up putting in what's called base of preference and got us down to Florida. Okay. Because that's one of the other reasons I got out is because I was higher ranking. She wasn't. They don't let you do what's called base of preference. So we put that out there and boom, we got Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. We're like, awesome. Northwest Florida. I've never been there, but it's going to be dope. Get down here and it's nothing but like spring break central. And there's like tons of traffic, but it's the most gorgeous beaches. The Emerald Coast is gorgeous. If you've never been here, you have to come down to Destin. And I was like, great, I'm here. In that time frame, I ended up switching over and I got a government job. So at the time, I was like, I started off as a GS4, which is like less than the rank I was in the military, which really sucked. And within a 2-year period, I ended up becoming a GS12, which is equivalent to like a captain / major in the Air Force. So I went from like airman, like E2 to like there in like 2 years. And I'm like sitting here and I'm doing like stuff I never thought I would do, like in the government. And I was like really happy. But deep down, I still felt like I was like totally, something wasn't really there. Like I still couldn't stand the fact that when I stood up at the table talking like some of these SESs, I would say something that's really important for us not to waste millions of dollars. And it would just get like, we'll think about it. Like that stuff really bothered me. So I started looking into, now that we're stabilized, like starting to build this real estate company. So this was in like early 2000, like late 2017, early 2018, somewhere around there. And what I ended up doing is keep in mind, I was a 50% travel job. So what I did is I sent $10,000 of direct mail. And basically I maxed out an American Express card, my Hilton Honors American Express card that I had for traveling with the government that I used to, get hotel Hilton Honors points. I basically maxed it out and sent direct mail. And I'll never forget it. I had sent it out, and then I had to go to California in the middle of freaking desert and like test this base defense system. And every day I would come back to my hotel room because we couldn't bring phones with us or nothing like that. And I had the cell phone was sitting there, I had my laptop, had everything ready. And I'd open it up and no call rail numbers, like nothing, no voicemails, nothing. I was like, what in the world's going on here? Like everything was supposed to hit. This is a lot of direct mail. It's a lot of money. It has to work. So I was in California for 2 weeks and not one freaking phone call. I was like, there has to be something that's broken here. Like this, like everybody else is sending a bunch of direct mail, and I know people in my market that's doing it. I got back, and it's in the room right across from me here. And I had like my mailbox was full, like it was overflowing of postcards. I was like, they're like, what in the world is going on here? Like it has to be an anomaly. I can't think of anybody else that's ever told me a story that they got back and like all their postcards were back inside of their mailbox, and at that moment I was like, dude, this is never going to work. If this happens every single time, how are you supposed to make money? But I laid out all those postcards and I looked at them and I realized that like every single one of them were called Jack. Some of them were missing zip codes. Some of them were missing names. Like none of it was like proper. All the ones that came back to me, some of them did make it out. So at that time I said, you know what, I'm done. And this was like probably 4 months into my journey. This is actually probably like February 2018 at this point. And so I looked at all that stuff. I sat down and I took sticky notes and I put it everywhere. And I said, what do I know about this business? And then I thought about how do we hack, planes and base defense systems and the enterprise systems that we do. How do we structure our teams and how do we go about that approach? So I broke the wholesaling business down into 4 quadrants: acquisitions, dispositions, administrative, and marketing. So I put out these Post-it notes, kind of like the big board I have there, and I put each of those on each of them. And I wrote down everything I know about each of those different roles. And I said, listen, I need to be traveling 50% of the year. So which one is the most important for me to get handling by somebody else right now? And that was marketing. So I went in and I did videos and I don't know if I can share screens, but I would literally share it for everybody, for anyone who is
Good.
watching, of what it is that I had done in my real estate company. At this time, I was back for like a month, and I just focused on just this stuff. And I ended up creating this Google site, and the Google site looked like this. So let me share really quick for anybody. If you're not watching on YouTube or whatever, then you should. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did this. I made a website like this, and I created this list one, and I clicked creating list, and I made a video for every single one of how to pull list, how to do list cleanup, how to like I broke everything down on how to handle it. You can even see in this intro video. I don't know if you can see it. See this table in the back left corner behind me there? That's right over here where that's sitting now. The couch, and that was like my assembly line. So you can't see it's to the left on the table. There's a bunch of baskets. So after I sent all that direct mail, I was pretty much tapped out, and I didn't have any more money to do anything. So I was like, I'm just gonna have to send these postcards physically. So I would go to was it not Walmart, the other one, Sam's Club, and I would buy 5,000 stamps at a time. And they had to go in the back and like open up a safe or something like that. They said like I basically, they were literally ordering stamps at Sam's Club for me, and I would handwrite all of the postcards in an assembly line, and then have a stack of them to send out. And I would do that as I came back from these trips that I was going on, and it ended up being where I was only doing like 2,000 a month just because of time. So I ended up having like a crap ton of stamps left over. So that was that. That really quickly only lasted like 3 rounds or something like that. Then I started like printing. I'd like printed perfectly and lined it up to where I can print handwritten. Like I wrote one and then I copied it, and I used a copier to copy over and put my handwritten on that. But I left a perfect space for the address. And then I would put that as my paper in the printer, and then only print the addresses, just the like 123 Main Street onto the things. It was just so much work. I was like, this is ridiculous. So that's when I ended up switching back over to postcards after that point. But I built something like this, and I broke down each bit of the company. And so I did that, and then I decided I wanted to hire 3 core people. I said I want an administrative person who handles making sure all the marketing is going out, because that needs to be happening to generate leads while I'm gone or not gone. And then I hired an acquisition manager and paid him 20% of my, each deal, but they did acquisitions and dispo. So I don't know what it was, but like I took the 3 months there, and I took a break. I didn't do anything after between whatever month I'm at now, probably like around the February and like, was that what month is 3 months after that? I can't math well. Maybe like August or something. May. Yeah, May. Yeah, so May, and I sent out and kicked up marketing, and then I went traveling again. And for whatever reason, like we started closing deals. I don't know what it was. We cleaned our data. It is what I had tested to. We cleaned our data. We skip traced it. Oh, I also hired a cold caller. So I had a cold caller, acquisitions, dispositions, and then I had my administrative. And we just started closing deals. I think we ended up closing like roughly 2 deals a month up to that point. And then, so I think because that's how I met Max, is I ended up going to Max's event. I paid into the mastermind there, and I think I had closed like 6 or 7 deals at that time. And then in those like 4 months. And then I left Max's, and I had the same structure set up. I had everything. I didn't change anything leaving out of it, because I don't really believe in like making a huge adjustments. And then we just ended up, just because of consistency more than anything, by the end of that last quarter there, we ended up closing like 250,000 and in deals. And I said, you know what, right now I was a GS12, so I made 80,000 a year as a GS12, 6 congressmen I think it takes to like fire you as a GS12. And I had an incident where I went down to Panama City there was a property down there that had an elderly lady called me. I was walking between a building on base to another building on base, one secure, one not secure. So I'm in the secure building and I start getting a ring on my phone. This is 9 o'clock, like 9:02 in the morning, like really like right after 9. And I know that because my phones didn't activate until 9 in the morning, like the call rail numbers. So she called in, and I remember I just started having a carrot site, and I had a Craigslist ad out, and she called from the Craigslist ad, and it came in. She went from the Craigslist ad to my carrot site, and she called the carrot number rather. So I get the phone call, I pick it up, and it's just like, she's like 86 years old. And she's like, do you buy houses? I'm like, yeah, I do. What's going on? She's like, well, I have this property down in Panama City that was my son's. And I'm like, what do you mean was your son's? What's going on? And she's like, well, my son passed away at like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like, I mean, it's only 9 a.m. It's only been like 6 hours, man. I just think, you know, you can call me back later. You've got affairs to take care of. She says, no, I really need to take care of this. I'm like, okay. Well, tell me what's going on. She said, well, I bought this for my son. He was diagnosed with cancer earlier in like May of that year. And this might have been actually a little bit earlier than that. So when I actually had the deal, because it was earlier, he got diagnosed in May and he lived for 3 months and then passed. So I must have closed out on this deal like later in the year after we evicted the people. But so we go down there, take a look at this property, and I had to wait until after I got done work. So I left work a little bit early, kind of just like slipped away. I get down there and this place is like, it's jacked. It's got like tents set up in the back. It's got water coming from the little tiny house he was living in to the back. It was like they were running like a brothel mixed with like cooking meth like in the same property. I ended up evicting 18 people from there. I had like calls to my phone randomly, like threatening to like kill me and stuff. Like these dudes were like, one of them had just got out from like 18 years. And you know, they just weren't good people. And this 86-year-old just lost her daughter. Her husband was having dialysis every single week, which for people that don't know, that's like blood transfusions, you know, taking blood out, putting blood back in. And he was really frail. And I remember sitting at the table right after I seen the property. I went back to their house and I sat at the table and they told me the story of them losing their son. And their son was 62. So they're 20 years older than their son. And here they are still surviving and they lose their son. And they told me the story of, you know, them going in there and him like, you know, like kind of screaming for a second and then them just bringing in like basically like buckets. And he was just throwing up blood basically, which is kind of graphic, I guess. And, you know, he basically died of blood loss because his lungs filled up with blood. And, you know, that's how he went out with cancer. And I was just so moved. And it kind of just pushed me even harder to like, you know, get these people off this property. So we worked really hard, got 18 people evicted, bought the property for like 30,000. And then I sold it to a builder for like 60 and we made 30 grand. And I was like, wow, you know, that's like, it was at that moment I actually realized it and understood like that the bigger the problem you solve, the more money you make. And I'm here solving like really big problems, you know, in the government, like international problems. And I make $80,000 a year. And the next day I went in and left my job. Cold turkey. But I told myself that I wasn't going to, it just lined up perfectly where this situation happened. And I made 3 months straight more or equal to my government salary in a month. So like it was my thing moving into like, I'm not going to leave unless I do those things. So I set up a goal for it. We ended up hitting that goal. And then this happened, which kind of was that like extra icing on the cake. Like, okay, yeah, that kind of was like the thing that made me realize that I was making the right decision. Because even if I had one of those situations, like that one thing a year, like I would be totally fulfilled inside. And that was a big thing I realized I was missing this whole time. Being in the military, I thought I was going to be fulfilled. Working for the government, I thought I was going to be fulfilled. Because the whole time I was chasing like stability. I was chasing me feeling like I had enough money to be able to have the things we wanted. And I flipped that around and said, well, I don't really care so much about how much money I'm making as much as I care about solving people's problems, which is why now one of our core values is bring solutions, not problems. And, you know, and everything freaking changed for me after that. Like everything changed. You know, I have better relationships. I interacted with people that really pushed me forward a lot more. Um, and that whole year, the rest of that year throughout 2019, I paid off all my debts from my wholesaling. Only debt that I have is the house that I'm sitting under, which is has a 5-year plan. It should be totally paid off. Hopefully sooner than that, knock on wood. It's going to have to if we maintain course and I have to do the distributions I have to do. But like, it's just what I realized. Solving problems makes you money. And if you do it, like we were talking about earlier, in the most organic, genuine way, and you're not like saying, oh, I'm solving problems, but really like, I can't wait to solve this problem to get money. That's not the right approach. You can't have that. And you can't just speak it. It has to be really something internal that you have. And if you don't have that yet, it generally means that you're just not ready. You know, you're creating it, and you can self say it over and over and over, and that's going to help you get there faster, right? But at one point it's going to officially click, and it's going to be like, for real, and you're going to actually feel that way instead of just saying that. Because initially you're not gonna actually know it. Like, you're gonna be saying it because you know that's how you need to be, and that's just a personality and a life kind of adjustment that you have to go through. So that's what I believe, and that's kind of how I figured out, out my business stuff. And then when I realized that my marketing and my success was driven from my success that I was having was driven from the marketing and the structure that I had, I said I need to automate my business more. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up writing scripts. I'm a cybersecurity guy, so I know Python pretty well. I ended up writing scripts to handle a lot of stuff for my VA, to do data management and list cleaning and all that kind of stuff. And I was tired of like her having issues with Python on her computer, so we put it into a little web app. In fact, in one of my old YouTube videos, when I talk about is like the same one I put into a web app is what shows like a random browser that I opened up, and I dropped a file into it, and it put like it cleaned up inside of my desktop, split up by clean, incomplete trust, companies, numbers, no numbers. And that was initially like the beginning. And I was talking to some buddies that I met at the mastermind, Armani and Jordan. One's out of DFW and one's out of Philly area. And I was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm just, creating this thing, and hopefully I can automate my business more off of it. Is what I'm hoping. And like, dude, you should make it into a web app. So I really attest REISift to those two guys, like, mentioning that it should be something that we put out there, or I guess kind of pushing me to do it. And then, so I did. And then we pre-sold 50 users, and I was like, holy crap, like people see that this is a problem. And I started building it. And then that kind of merged REISift and Florida Cash Real Estate, and then my life since then has kind of been a blur a little bit, because it's been a little all over the place. But at that point, I really started focusing. I was already pretty hands off in Florida Cash Real Estate, but at that point, I was really focusing. I was spending like $10,000 a month in development. Like I had to focus on my real estate company to figure out how to build that. I'm bootstrapping this software company. And trying to educate people on a problem they don't know that they have at the same time through my YouTube content. And what I learned is that I just have to remove every other bit of noise and just focus on the things that are, I need to focus on in both companies, and set a structure around it. So now, we're at the point where, I have a solid dev team. I have, core people in my real estate company that really keep that going. And that's kind of just how I've done it. It's kind of just one day at a time, structured out, removing the Mondays and the Fridays, leaving those open, and trying to do the best you can. In the auto lead gen challenge thing, we have this worksheet that everyone seems to be enjoying. It's like one single sheet. It's like a daily planner, kind of what I've done in my bullet journal. Well, my bullet journal's over there, but I kind of redid it into like a worksheet. And it's basically what I do for my day to day. And I think one of the biggest things though, that made it to where like we had a lot of trouble with like finding core team members that actually cared about the company and cared about like me, cared about, all that stuff. And what really helped me get there was, number one, having like solid core values. And I really feel really confident in our new core values that we kind of just adopted, to kind of bring that full circle. Like people are already like using them and holding themselves accountable to them. But I think the genuality, and then um, putting myself online has bring in the right people, because they get to see me through my YouTube content and how I present myself, and that naturally brings the right person to me. Obviously, you end up getting people that are coming to you because they see you're making money and they want to be in your company because they're failing at their company. So they're coming in for the wrong reasons. You got to kind of vet those people out. But honestly, that's like the biggest thing. So I always tell people, like, if you're starting or getting into this, or you're not doing it yet, like put your stuff out there, because the worst thing that can happen is that, you could pass away, and then, your kids get to have the biography that, they wouldn't have had otherwise. They get to see the things we're not like the old times when, our granddads, might have journaled, and they would write stuff down, like I think one of my granddads did that, like he was a huge journaler. So his whole life was like written out, so there's that memento there. Most people don't do that nowadays unless you're into self-development and you're doing the things kind of like what we all do here. But like, I mean, documenting that. I mean, all these interviews that you're doing, Carlos, when you have kids, you don't have a kid yet, right?
Yeah. Not
No,
yet.
yeah. So once you have kids and everything, all these interviews, I mean, all these are going to be like, they're going to hear your opinion, your stories, all the stuff you're doing for InvestorFuse. And it's really kind of a really cool thing if you think about it. But anyway, that's a really long rant of my whole story, and kind of a few of my outlooks and how I got to kind of where I'm at and where I'm at now.
No, dude, beautifully said, man. It resonated with me deeply. Kind of the 80-20, I guess. I mean, there's a ton of points that I can hit on, and I was kind of. This is actually the first interview in a while. I've been like taking notes on my Evernote here on the second display while I've been doing it. But to kind of 80-20 your success, not only across both businesses. The one point I made is like, damn, like you get so much done, or like you do so much when I'm in like one company, and I'm like, damn, I'm doing a lot of stuff, and couldn't imagine taking on another aspect, and also fulfillment in life, stuff like that. Kind of boils down to that mindset of actually truly embracing like unconditional, like giving and providing value, or wanting to solve problems. And then also kind of how you structure yourself with your weeks and stuff. Where the Monday, Friday you take off, like you're doing an interview like this. I even love how you frame it. Now I can't remember, because we actually had a longer session making sure that we had the audio and video together. So I can't remember what was recorded, what was not. But kind of like how you are, kind of the accountability that you have, taking full self-responsibility of your life. And that's how you are with your REISift users and probably people in your company. It's along the lines of your core values as well. So a lot of that stuff is the mindset stuff. I think there's a good portion of people that are in the section of, they might be working another job besides real estate, or maybe they're not. Maybe their business just isn't doing 80K a year, and they're trying to implement this, but they're not making the money yet. So there's a little bit of like cognitive dissonance of like, man, I am trying to give, I am trying to do this, but they're still kind of spinning tires, and they're not at that place yet where they have, the 4 departments broken up nicely, and process documentation, all that type of stuff, and getting those type of deals closed where they're able to get 80K a month. So it's like, re-listening to that, because there was a ton just in Tyler's last answer there, or breakdown there, of things that you can do, which really starts with mindset. That's what I talk about every week, really, because I think that's the 80-20 of life and what it breaks down to. But there's a ton of stuff that he went through that you can re-listen and kind of probably like what we were talking about, like in the context of reading a full book versus just reading a book until you get a nugget or two out of it, that you'll be able to take from what Tyler said, depending on where you're at.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's I think like a lot of people enter into this business for the wrong reason to start with. I think you got to sit down and figure out, well, like, what am I really trying to build here? Where am I really trying to go? And then reverse engineer back from there, to figure out how it is. Because a lot of people, you have to truly understand like what that is and why you're building it. You really, really need to know that. Like, that's like the ultimate, like, number one thing. If if you're coming into this to build revenue, you need to approach the business to build revenue. If you're coming in this because you know you're going to be in real estate for the next 60 years, you need to come into this knowing that I'm building a business, I'm building something for the next 60 years, the 80-20 principle, right? Like if you're coming into this because you just want rentals, you need to own that and understand that, okay, I just need rentals. So I need to make sure I adjust my marketing, adjust my approach and how I'm building the business, because your business is going to differ based off of your approach of where you're trying to get to, so, and you got to answer that question first and foremost. And then after you have that answered, it's like, okay, now, like, what is my why? Why am I doing this? And then, just integrate yourself with the right people. The people that would be watching this podcast right now are already the people that are in the position to succeed, right? Because they're already seeking out and filling their mind with things like podcasts and stuff like that. I'm not going to lie. I mean, at the end of the night, like I play a crap ton of video games. Like I'm a huge nerd. I watch anime, I play my video games. I do all that stuff, but it's generally like, between the hours of 9 and 11 that's happening. And Carlos and I have talked about this before. Like I'm trying to get my schedule back on play, because like I would literally go, my day would be, I'd wake up right around 8:30 and I'd work from like 9 until, usually right around 5-ish. And then my wife gets home, and then, I'll go out, I'll kind of see stuff. I'll see what's going on. We might eat dinner. And then after like from 6 until 9, roughly, I'm like back doing some stuff. And then from 9 until like 11 or 12-ish, I'm like doing more real estate stuff, building like stuff out in my dashboards or checking the KPI stuff, making sure we're on track. And then from, whatever time that ends, or no, from 9 until like the 2 a.m. or whatever, that's me gaming. And then like, so like I almost have like a full shift of just gaming at night. Like if you think about it, it's pretty bad. Like I almost have like a full like shift. And that's because for the longest time, like my buddies, the guys that I resonate with, I talk about having the right people in your life. I have my business people, and you don't have to have a top 5 of people who are like millionaires. Like you don't have to. One of them, my buddy, he's stationed with me on my very first duty station. We were in tech school together, and he's really big into fitness, but he's still enlisted. And he was stationed in Korea at the time. So in order for me to play with him and speak with him and see how he's doing, I'd have to stay up extra late my time. So that's kind of what built that habit out there. But then after we stopped gaming, from that until like usually 3 or 4 a.m., like I'm back doing whatever stuff I didn't get done. And then I'd sleep from like 3 or 4 until that 8:30. So, I mean, there's a big period of time where I was only getting like 4.5 hours of sleep. And then Friday would hit. And because Saturday we're not as active in the real estate company or nothing like that, I would like sleep until like 1 o'clock on Saturday. So like my clock would catch up. And then I just, that obviously would just feed the beast, because then I'd have to stay up I'd stay up later, and then you'd reset again. And it's not a good way to go. But if you're not the type of person that can power through all that, like for me, I worked mid shift and night shift my whole military career. So like I was used to that. I was used to traveling, a bunch and having like a really messed up schedule. But in the back of my mind, I know that I have the mission I got to get done, and that was building my company. So it didn't really matter what the time was or anything like that. So if you can have a structure from the beginning, then that's fantastic. I commend you. I suck at it. It's something I work on daily, but I think those 3 things are really important. If you take anything from what I had said earlier, it's like a big one.
Absolutely, man. Love the breakdown there. But yeah, man, video games are a good way to connect. I mean, I'm sure you were doing that pre-quarantine time to a certain extent, but yeah, man, that's just kind of how it is. We're recording this the first week of June, and hopefully some stuff starts getting lifted off. I think down in your area, stuff is starting to open up more so than up here in Maryland. But that's just how humans are wired for like connection. So I'm a big relationship guy. So I think something kind of even more foundational than real estate or success, I think, is you should always be looking at the connections that you have and strategically trying to show your appreciation in relationships that you have. First and foremost, your family, friends, teammates, if you have a company or people inside your company, and then also I guess you could say technically like customers or clients or whatever, or even seeing them as like members, and really valuing each of those with the foundation of like I'm just trying to unconditionally give. And that just doesn't have to be like a client relationship with sellers. That's like with your family too. Like I'm sure that you have
Yeah.
that same mindset and more with Testain and your wife and everything like that, as well as your buddy if you're staying up. You know, you're running two businesses for your family and you're willing to stay up late just to hang out and talk shop and, you know, shoot some people in Call of Duty, do whatever game you're playing at the time. But you know, that's a big thing that I think about daily, and I'm trying to improve myself daily as well.
Yeah, I think something that really helped me like hone that skill set, and I'm definitely not perfect at it, but something that really helped me hone it was um, like morning and evening gratitudes. It's
Mm-hmm.
something I'm trying to get, a lot of our users to adopt, and it's like if you can just like be genuinely like happy and content with like I don't know, the other day, after I brushed my teeth, I was just like, man, I'm like so thankful to have toothpaste. Like something that we use every single day that most of us aren't even like thinking about. Just like was super happy for that. Like super happy to have like my candle that I sit here is apple dumpling one because like randomly I'll put it on. Like just I'm just happy for the person that had the idea to even like I don't know mix this stuff together. Something even more like when I light this, there's something about when you light the candle, also like my butane lighters, when you light it, just the way and the noise that the crackles make as it like lights, like little tiny things like that. If you could be grateful for the things that are at a micro level, you'll organically start to see all the good things that you have in your life, even while you're struggling through building companies and struggling through the daily stuff. So I've tried to adopt that really heavily into like my relationships with my wife, for example, because it's really, really easy as you get into like the consistent, things you're doing day in and day out to really not take for to really take for granted the things that your spouses, do for you on the daily that you don't even like think about. Like, my wife doing the laundry, all the time. Like I never had to worry about doing laundry. This is always done, so I'm thankful to have this shirt on right now because like it would probably smell really bad if it wasn't for my wife.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just little things like that. Like that's the real thing that makes, I think, entrepreneurs succeed long term, because and that's why I focus on it so heavily, because without that core foundation, without having appreciation, without having like genuality, without having like all that stuff, you can make a bunch of money and you can stack up this this empire, but a lot of it's built on sand. And if it gets wet or there's any sort of shift in the ground, it starts kind of moving a bit, and then over time it just ends up crumbling. So and that's that empire that I'm talking about is you internally, not your businesses. So that's just kind of how it is, like gratitude and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know what
Mhm.
else is normally talked about on the 80-20 as far as like other business stuff, but I don't know. I think that's like the biggest things that's just changed my life.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about that stuff all the time. And one of my roommate's girlfriends sent me a good podcast because she knows I like the book Happiness to Binge. I talk about a good bit, and she was on there giving some good strategic advice. And she talks about that, like the neurology of your brain or however your brain works with the gratitude is super interesting. It's no pun intended, like a no brainer for people to start doing that. And I think as time goes on, it's going to be more and more relevant and almost like like I said, kind of like a no brainer. Everybody doing it. Yeah, I mean, we jam on that stuff all the time. If anybody's interested in that type of podcast, I'd be happy to share it with you. I think it's called the Happiness Lab potentially, but it's
Well,
the same. Let me look it up real quick. It's the same Yale professor that's mentioned in the book The Happiness Advantage, which was recommended to me by Brett Daniels, which is a really really good book. Let me see if I can find it on the podcast app real quick.
what was the name of the book? The Happiness Advantage.
Yeah, Happiness Advantage. That's some of the, I go through some of that stuff in 80/20 Academy, which is cool. And then the podcast that I just started is called The Happiness Lab, which is sort of the Yale professor, which studies positive psychology, which is like such a small, underutilized, not underutilized, but just like a small percentage of what people perceive as psychology, which is mostly like self help or like mental conditions or stuff like that, like almost like negative like stuff that you're trying to overcome versus more so it's like to me it's kind of like stoicism 101. Like, all right, how do I optimize myself the best? How do I live the most fun and fulfilled life possible? And something we'll jam about too is like, how do I leave like the longest lasting, like coolest legacy that I want to build out? Similar to your like, you have to know what type of business and what type of results you want. Like if you want to have like 10 rentals just to be able to have passive income, they're paid off in 30 years, boom. Everything you do for your branding, core values is along that. That type of stuff that I jam on is more so like that, except for like your life and like your day to day, how to live the most, fulfilled and have the most fun at the end of the day, really.
Yeah, that's 100%. Yeah, stoicism is a really interesting thing too. I haven't heard anybody else mention stoicism in a long time. But yeah, stoicism, the uh, just the well balanced. It's just like the whole picture. People think about entrepreneurship and they think grind, 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 and it's like yeah, that's like what you have to do. But there's so much support that comes behind that to make that possible that you really got to focus on because it's really easy to grind, especially like for most people that are wired to be entrepreneurs. It's like the easiest thing to do. But what's hard is to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's like healthy, you know? So yeah, that's dope. I love it.
Yeah, man. Well, I could jam about that stuff all the time, which I do pretty much on every episode. I do want to kind of talk about data a little bit.
Yep.
We'll give a little taste of data as well. And as I said earlier, I'll definitely share some resources where Tyler's just talking A through Z through data. This is more so like behind the curtain, just to see him as a person, everything like that. I know for your real estate business, you broke it down into a few different categories: acquisitions, dispositions, marketing, admin. You mentioned a fifth one on Max's, which is networking and education. If you want to touch on that, I also want to talk down how you break down data when you get it. So it's such a popular talking point. I don't know a ton about it. That's definitely not my forte. I know genuine stuff about it. I've heard interviews you've talking about it. And you break it down into four different ways, and you kind of talk about how you hit it as far as like the communication channel of preference and pertaining to how clean or dirty the data is based on the contact information you have, the name and how correct all that stuff is. So if you kind of want to give like a broad stroke, kind of like the 80-20 of data and how REISift can help. So we talked about your journey, everything like that. That would be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. So I look at data. First and foremost, data is nothing but a metric, right? It's nothing but like a DNA of somebody or something. So I look at it really focused in on like what is the reason or what is like the true purpose of the data? Like what is the real purpose? Like high equity, for example. High equity is it got really two purposes. Number one, it's nice because we get a bunch of information, right, of a homeowner really easily. Like if you buy data from list sources high equity, you're getting a bunch of names, you're getting addresses, you're getting all the gamut. But it's really not anything that makes anyone want to sell a house. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If you think about it from this perspective and you say that, oh, I'm going to call the homeowner, I'm going to say, hey, ma'am, I know you got 60% equity in your house. I was curious if you give me 55%, you can keep the other 5. If you approach it thinking from that perspective, you'd realize that high equity is kind of like garbage data. It's a qualifier for you to be able to work with somebody more efficiently without any advanced tactics like sub 2 or anything like that. So that's how I look at like high equity. And then I just basically break down what I call amplifier data, which is vexations, right? Stuff that keeps people awake at night is what I say. And that would be anything. And I also redubbed that kind of, I call them ouchies now in the community because I think it's funner and less boring. I call it my ouchies campaigns. And, what is the real underlying thing in that vexation? What's really going on there? What is the real underlying issue with probate? Like what is really there? What is really the real underlying issue with tax delinquency? For example, tax delinquent property that's absentee versus tax delinquent property that's unoccupied. What is the real vexation between the two people? One loses money, the other one loses their home. So which one do we think would have more motivation in it? Probably the one that's going to lose the roof over the head. What's the bigger problem that I can solve, and have, the testimonial from it to in the situational base, to prove that we know what we're doing. So like that's as far as data is concerned, and looking at data in general, like that's how I approach it. And then after we understand that, and we understand in our market what is the most common vexations that I want to solve, then I start looking at it like, okay, let's go ahead and get that data. And now as we gain that data into our company, our data is the second most important asset that we have in our business behind people. So you got people and you got data. And without those two things, we have no wholesaling company. We have no real estate company. You need people, whether it be your employees in your business or the people that own the property. And you, without a doubt, need information. So we have to treat them equally. We have to make sure that they're nurtured. We have to make sure they're updated. We have to make sure that there's nothing they need. It's, I think Christina Kraus, if I have that name properly, she had mentioned something in hers where she's like, it's like the baby, you gotta figure out one lead is not the same as another lead, or you gotta take care of it differently. And as that data intakes into our business, it's not created equal, right? Your list from code enforcement from one county is going to be different than your list from the other county. And we have to make sure that all that data is put together and neatly with a bow tied on top of it to set our business up for the success that it needs. We call that data hygiene, right? So you need to take your data and you need to intake it into your business, and there should be uniformity across everything. You shouldn't have a different column header in your CSV on one versus on the other. As soon as it enters into your company, there needs to be a process that says, hey, good, rearrange the document, make it like this, 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 this. That way, if anything ever comes up in your business later on, you never have the question on what was going on or what wasn't. It's like you have your Google Sheet that has the original source file, and then it has like the FCRE format, and it's the same across the board. And that's how we did it early on. We still do that piece, but there was a second piece on top of that where when you intake the data, you have to clean it. And that is where we get into, what is a clean record and what isn't. A clean record consists of a full first name, a full last name, a full mailing address, which is mailing street address, city, state, zip, and then a property full address like property street, property city, property state, property zip. That consists of a full address. If it doesn't have that, and for example, it has a first initial, it's missing a last name, it's missing a zip code, all those things are considered incomplete. And if you try to market to it, you increase your likelihood that you're wasting money. And I don't like that. So I said, okay, well, let's move all that data out of our data and let's break our list down into really it's six primary like segments: clean data, incomplete data, trusts, and companies. And then you have no numbers and numbers. So the flow of it goes intake data, clean data, break that data apart into these different lists, take the clean data, skip trace that data, and then split that clean data as incomplete or as numbers and no numbers. Your no numbers, you would then market to however you need to market to, skip trace somewhere else, and then do the same thing. Your numbers, then you market to those. The big thing is the trust in the company is a big problem that people have is they don't ever market to those. They never pull the data. We just had a user yesterday night on the REISift mastermind. It's like, hey, just locked up 4 houses today. I'm like, oh, cool. He went into his REISift account. It was vacant, vacancy checked in REISift. That's how he marketed to him. He cold called him. And he locked up 4 houses from that individual, and it was an LLC that was owned. So most people, they think that when they think of marketing, they think of, again, it's the problem of not thinking about the real underlying, what is this data? If you have a vacant property from a LLC, how is that any different? It's not like that LLC is a fictitious thing. It's attached to a human being. You know what I mean? So there's no reason to get rid of that data. However, we need to get it out of our primary marketing because we don't want to skip trace it without generally cleaning it, or looking up the owner of that LLC and then skip tracing those. So in REISift, what it does is when you upload your data, sometimes you got to get it to a minimal viable solution, or like a 50% solution, like getting it structured, the CSV structured, right? Like I was talking about earlier. But you upload it to REISift and it actually breaks apart all that for you. It says, okay, well, we run it through the USPS. We have the clean data. And then it takes anything that doesn't check green from the USPS that says, hey, this isn't proper. And there's also an algorithm we have in the background to like split out the LLCs and the trusts too. But if any of those aren't complete, it goes under an incomplete tab, compared to what most people do is they don't even do anything with that data, period. When they skip trace it, most of it, they don't get numbers for, so they don't even like reach the people. And when they mail it, those get returned in the mail, you know? So we just break it apart and we do what we call milking that data. So week by week, my VA is inside the incomplete tab and she's just fixing it up and cleaning it, and it pushes it to clean. And then we just do month by month marketing. So every single month we do our filters, we tag our records with our campaigns for the next month. And then we suppress out the previous month's campaign and we do the same exact filters as the previous month. And we see, boom, there's all the records that are brand new that we've either milked or added into our company that month through, eviction list weekly or whatever. And then that gets pushed into the next campaign. So that whole sequence there is like the data hygiene, the data management, and all that kind of stuff, making sure that we're nurturing and coddling these different things differently. And then you have the difference between stacked data, vacant data, and so on. I call that data buckets. And again, like Carlos said, there's going to be it goes in depth in this. This, believe it or not, is more of the high level. And the data buckets are high equity, stacked, vacant, and ouchies. That's the 4 data buckets. So that's the 4 primary campaigns we build in marketing. I prefer in my business, we do cold calling first. And we direct mail anybody who is in the stacked bucket the whole time. So it's kind of like, I call it's a marketing cycle. You have 3 marketing cycle or 2 marketing cycles, cycle A and cycle B, and we're working on developing a 3rd marketing cycle, which deals with PPC and Facebook ads, and where that fits into the mix. But with cycle A and cycle B, cycle A is essentially anything with numbers and cheap marketing, and cycle B is anything that's like expensive, basically like direct mail and door knocking, and anything without numbers. So it's really hard, and that's one of the things we probably don't want to get into on this one, just because of how without seeing the videos and seeing the breakdown, it can be confusing. But we basically run this data through cycle A and cycle B either at the same time, or one goes through cycle A, and then there's a funnel at the bottom that essentially moves data from cycle A into cycle B once it's ready. And that's just this cog, this machine, this assembly line that just continually happens and flows in the business to produce the leads that we want to produce, in order to not have a bunch of garbage, have people that want to actually work with us, that fits our brand and that fits our core values. And yeah, I think that's kind of pretty much everything. Was there anything specifically that you kind of would think about that I might have missed?
I don't think so, man. I mean, I think people are definitely going to want some more resources to hear the intricacies on this. But you guys, I'm going to re-listen to this interview when I'm putting it and ending it all together. But you guys are getting a nice breakdown from a high-level guy on a lot of different things here. Data, why people and data are the 2 most important things in the business. How he was successful in his transition to different jobs that he had to full-time REI now. You're still in the reserves right now?
No, I actually, something I forgot about is when I switched over to be an instructor here at Hurlburt on the cybersecurity side. And I was there for like a month, and I was like, you know what, like Hurricane Michael had hit at the time. And right when Hurricane Michael hit, I said, I'm done. I can't do, I was driving down to, Panama City to help people out down there. It's too much with houses. And we bought a bunch of houses down there, and it's like, I can't do this. So I ended up leaving that. And then like a month or 2 later is when I ended up leaving my W-2 officially. So I went on, okay, so no, actually, so officially I went on, cool thing about the government is when you get to, as like a what do you call it? A tenured like GS, you can go on up to 12 months leave without pay. So like you can still have a job and like not have any sort of like requirement to go, and you could just go on leave without pay. You're not making no money, but in 12 months from now, you just go back like nothing ever happened. So that's what I had done, when I had left. It's something I did leave out. I mean, I always had a fallback if like for whatever reason I fell on my face. I didn't really look at it. I knew I wasn't going to use it, but so that led into that. So yeah, it was like a 6-month I ended up not even lasting the whole 12 months before I told him like, yeah, I'm done. I ended up going in, I think it was like 3 months in. I was like, yeah, I'm not, I'm done. So
Cool. Well, hey man, congrats on being able to build something, including multiple assets that you're able to leave that, man. That's cool.
yeah, it's been fun. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do really miss like hacking things. It's tempting not to hack my own website. But but you know, I have like a bunch of toys and a bunch of stuff to keep my hands entertained on the keyboard. But yeah, man, it's been great. It's been fantastic. You know, just networking and using and by the way, for anyone who's not like in InvestorFuse and stuff, like InvestorFuse has been the CRM the whole time throughout that whole process. Most people that are watching this, I'm sure, probably are, but from Podio and then into InvestorFuse 2.0 has been that the coddle for our baby leads, to make sure they're getting what they need. So, it's just having about the right tools, the right people in your business, and that's it, man. It's that simple. It's crazy how simple it really is.
Love that, man. Yeah, if you see it as simple, it will be simple. Obviously, you're going to need some advice and people and content to see or information to absorb. But that's another like foundational thing that I found so true with myself is like if you think something's going to be challenging, like if you truly believe that to the point of close to being a conviction, that's what it's going to be. To loop back to your question, T, you're like, I think you said did I miss anything? Probably there's probably like 99% of stuff that you can probably go deeper on and more intricate on and explaining data and everything around that. So as I've said multiple times here, I'll make sure that you guys definitely have a resource. I'll text you after this to make sure I get something. Because I saw you post on Facebook. There's like even like a 3 hour video that I liked from somewhere.
Oh
Same thing with
yeah.
like seeing people on social media where you like set up like a whole marketing campaign A through Z to do all different type of marketing channels, everything like that. So I'll definitely make sure that you guys have something like that that's really really specific. To end this interview, to dot the I and cross the T on this interview, though, I want to hear something that you mentioned that we both mentioned on this call, and I heard you on Max's interview talk about where it's like this whole business you're setting up to be a legacy, and I kind of want to hear where you're at now because that last time I heard you talk about it was close to about a year and a half ago. So for me, like my why legacy thoughts, it's all
Oh,
going to
I
be
lost you.
generally. Did you lose
Oh,
me?
you're back. Yeah,
Oh,
it
I'm
sounds
back.
like yeah, you are. It's kind of like cutting a little bit, tiny bit.
Hmm.
I don't know. It sounds like a loose cable or something.
Let me see my internet. If I get it unstable, or just give me another stop like that if I start cutting out.
Yeah.
Um, but essentially, I was saying like I kind of just want to hear an update on like what you want, what type of legacy you want to leave. That's like a force for you. It was back in the interview I heard of you, and we've both been talking about today. So I kind of like to wrap up this interview with you speaking on that if you're down.
Yeah, no, it's a huge thing, man. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that from that. I forgot that I even mentioned that in that podcast, but that's a huge thing, man. I talk about that pretty often. It's like, it goes back to like, why are you building this? And for me, I always say like, if I die tomorrow and my businesses can't still operate, like I don't have a business. That's not a business to me. That's a job. And if you can't, if my family doesn't know what's going on, or if my family isn't getting anything from it long term, then you've just kind of been churning, and it's not going to happen right away. It's like we're all aiming to get there, but it's important that we button everything up the right way so that when push comes to shove, like something did bad happen, at least something is there that says that they're obligated for something. Um, so that's a huge thing for me, man. Building that legacy, building that thing where if I die tomorrow, my business is still operating and everything's still running and everything is still producing money. And my W-2 basically just transfers over to my wife, and they just don't have to worry about a thing, or maybe they get a payout, or something like that. So that's what I focus on, man. My legacy. It's like, what do I want to build? And to be honest, I've never really thought super, super deep on like, where does it end? Like, what is it that I want to do? There's a couple things that I really, really want to do. I've never really talked about in a podcast or anything like that, but the biggest thing that I'm trying to get to is I was talking to Jake about this the other day, who you haven't really met. Actually, you did meet Jake a little bit, but Probably don't remember him, but he's in the 80/20. He's a partner I brought on to handle multifamily private money and dispos. And we were talking the other day, and it revolves around like this house, right? Like I really want to pay off this house. And I know like I paid 320,000, I think is what I just refinanced. So that added like 10 grand onto my freaking mortgage, but I was down to like 310. My goal by the end of this year is to get it down to 250 and then pay it off within 5 years. And that's just part of building that legacy, right? Having that place that my family always has a place to live no matter what, unless some like martial law thing or something crazy happens in the United States. Like there's always a piece of ground, a piece of land that is owned by my family that if anything, everybody in my whole family can come live here. If like all the market crash, like somebody in my family has a property that everyone can have a roof over their head. And thankfully it's, we could always got like decent big backyards. We can put tents back there if we need to, I don't know. Like I just really want that. It's like a huge passion for me. I paid off everything else. I fixed all that stuff up based off of that sheet that I had, which I forgot about, by the way. This sheet, I had totally forgot about. I was cleaning my office and I seen it. I was like, holy crap, I've knocked all these off except for one thing. And that was I had just bought a 2019 Jeep Rubicon. And I was like, and this sheet, it said that I was supposed to own my vehicles and not like brand new vehicles, but nice vehicles that we're good with. So I went and I paid $8,000 to get rid of my Jeep and went and paid 17 grand for my truck, cash, and boom, that was taken care of. And then my house is the next thing. So that's part of that legacy. But moving out of that, the reason I want to pay off that, the reason I don't want debt, the reason I don't want any of that stuff is because we're building up that rental portfolio for the passive income. All because I need to be able to have enough passive income so that I can take the bulk majority of money that I have. Because I don't need, like after you pay off your debts and you have good money coming in, you realize that you have money you don't need. Like you realize how much really you don't need. The rest of it is like to put towards that legacy that we're talking about. Like what are we going to now put that money into to start building that thing that makes real true differences in the world? And I put this on my Instagram the other day. I'm like, what's the difference between the person that wants to take that and buy the Bugatti versus taking that and, putting money towards like healthy water in Africa or, other third world countries, like what is the difference between that person? For me, I don't know that answer. I just know that I have a deep underlying hatred and desire to fix cyber pedophiles. And that is like a huge passion for me. Ashton Kutcher has a program. He's somebody who has a really awesome fight against it. There's a lot of people in the UK battling it, and setting people up and then getting them arrested. Like that's a huge thing. It's just things that from my life and things that I've been through. And for people that are like inside my really close local community, they know, that's like a pretty big passion of mine. And so I really like want a nonprofit that handles cyberbullying. My Bill Allen, I think you guys have seen Bill Allen, he works Underground Railroad really heavily. And like that is something that's huge for me. I think I love how he structured his stuff. I love how he gives into Underground Railroad and he really pushes that. I want that same thing. So, I think financially I'm at the point now where I could start building something like that, but it's one of those things where in order to do anything great in this world, the sad truth about it is that you need money to do it. It's just how it works. Like if you want to make a change, you have to have money. And, or you have to have a really big voice and a big community and a big thing and a big uproar. So ideally, the other thing is that in order for me to be able to have money, I have to put myself around and be producing enough revenue or put myself in with more people that make either the same amount or more than me or have the same mission, have the same core values. So by growing up, by me leveling up, it levels up the people I'm around. It levels up everything. And then as I build out and I build that nonprofit, I already have pockets that can, help build that mission. And I guess like that's probably, if I were to talk about my number one focus as far as the legacy is concerned, it would be the fact that my family always has a house to live in. They're producing my W-2s from REISift and Florida Cash Real Estate, which I'll even be open about that. Like my only goal in my businesses is to have 120,000 a year W-2 from both my businesses. I don't really care about making more than that. I want a W-2 from REISift and a W-2 from Florida Cash Real Estate that is $120,000 a year. It's like $340 total. That allows me to build out my family wealth, more properties, more rentals, all that kind of stuff, put into stuff outside of the companies. And then whatever the companies make outside of that, the goal is to put that back into the community, put that back into building things, and building other businesses, right? So you talk about that in 80/20, right? The umbrella. So that's my goals: paid off house, that W-2 transferring over to my family if I were to pass away. And then, ideally, would love to have a nonprofit that captures people who are being idiots online.
Love it, man. Inspiring and well said. What's the Underground Railroad? Bill is one of the first interviews I did like 3.5 years ago. I think that was my second
Oh, really?
ever
I didn't know
interview
that.
I did. He's from Baltimore, but I know he's Florida, Tennessee range guy now. What's the Underground Railroad he has going on? Is that a nonprofit?
I think it is a nonprofit. I don't remember who the founder is on it, but he I don't think he's a founder, because I've asked him about that when I was trying to figure out what I needed to do to start my nonprofit. I went out to him for that. But he promotes it really heavy. If you look at his Flip Hacking Live, I think last time they gave like 125,000 towards Underground Railroad or something like that, something crazy. During Flip Hacking Live, that's his event that he does. And basically the mission of Underground Railroad is to stop human trafficking, so primarily for kids. So I want to say there was like 130 kids that they through their operation or something like that, or maybe more than that Underground Railroad fixed. And I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I want to say Russell Brunson might be in loop with that somehow, because I've seen that, or maybe it was just a donation at ClickFunnels Live or whatever that happened. I'm not quite sure, but Underground Railroad's it's a pretty awesome thing. You'll know it because the shirts have like a chain, like broken chains on it. So you're breaking the chains of, I'm assuming that means that you're breaking the chains of like child slavery and stuff like that. But yeah, it's an outstanding mission. Between his, Ashton Kutcher's mission, Ashton Kutcher's is more in the cyberspace specifically. They're really big role models on, what I want to build. And it's kind of like a merge between both of them, to be honest, because I come from the cyberspace, right? It's one of the reasons I got into cybersecurity, is because I had ambitions to go straight, from government agency to government agency and kind of be in those types of units. And because of my experience in that, it sets me up just better to be able to handle and build something out like that. So I'm interested to see what it takes, but right now, I don't know if we can effectively build it, but it's on my goal for the rest of this year to try and start building those foundations. So, yep.
Well, man, I'm genuinely excited to see the journey and rooting for you hard. Where's the best place for people to find you? I guess what's your IG handle and best place for people to connect with you and follow you, man? I think you might have a lot of new fans after people hear this, because this was an awesome interview.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Tyler Austin Original, is my IG handle. I believe that's my new Facebook one as well, but at Tyler Austin Original on Facebook. And then I have a Facebook group called No Excuses Real Estate Investing. There's only like 1,000 people in there. But that's my group. And then obviously REISift.io or .com is I'm the one on the intercom chat on there. I will be for as long as I can be. And then my YouTube channel, if you just search Tyler Austin on YouTube, I think I've almost taken over the baseball player. Like, I don't know who, I think it's from the Cubs maybe, but he's getting taken over. I don't know if he's retiring or whatever, but he's not being talked about as much lately, and I'm starting to take over the first page of Tyler Austin. And if any of you know who owns TylerAustin.com, so far I'm up to $1,000 I've offered for that domain, and he's not accepting or not answering us. So if we can get a hold of the guy, if you go to Tyler, if everybody just goes to TylerAustin.com and submits to this photography, he's like a photography guy from like 2015, submit, and maybe he'll answer one of our requests to like get on the phone. I really want that domain.
The funny thing is, CarlosZamora.com is the same exact thing. It's like an artist or something like that, artist or some type of graphic dude that I don't think uses it that much. So maybe we can both buy our own name domains back together. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I would love to have my own name. I mean, I would never have thought that Tyler Austin, like three first names. I have Tyler Mason Austin is my full name. Like, what's the odds that there's someone who took TylerAustin.com? Blew my
Right.
mind, but yeah, that's me.
That's funny. Well, dude, greatly, deeply appreciate you and the way you choose to live your life, man. It's inspiring. I'm probably gonna have a pretty productive Friday afternoon here before calling it quits and chilling for the weekend for the most part. But awesome stuff, man, and a lot to take in here, guys. I feel like this is definitely a repeat listen for a lot of people that heard this, and I'm excited to partner up and do some more stuff as far as like tactical data and all things real estate because you have a lot to provide there as well.
For sure. If anyone needs anything, reach out. If you need anything, reach out, man. I really do appreciate you putting me on the platform here and really enjoying the 80/20 community and being part of it. A few of them merged over and are just loving the interaction, the mindset in that community. So thanks so much.
Love it, man. My pleasure. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day whenever you're hearing this. Peace.